So, All of Us Strangers is the story of Adam, a screenwriter who is very lonely, just a lonely man. He doesn't have really anybody in his life, and he lives in this isolated tower block of apartments just on the other side of London. When he meets one night Harry, played by Paul Mescal, very nice guy. They kind of have a chance encounter, and things move along. That evening or that next day, looking for inspiration, Adam decides to take the bus and the train back to his old childhood home after looking at some photos. And when he arrives, he is not really surprised to find, but almost pleasantly surprised to find his parents from back in the day are still there. His mom and dad, played by Claire Foy and Jamie Bell. After a great evening in with them, catching up and talking about how things have been for their young boy since they last saw him in an odd sort of surreal Charlie Kaufman dreamlike sort of way, Adam heads back to his apartment, and he meets with Harry again, and they kind of talk about what had happened, and then the next day he goes back. It's this series of kind of back and forths with a young man, prominently gay, who is kind of struggling to find meaning and a place for himself in society, talking to his parents who are no longer around. They died in a car crash when he was 12, and he kind of has to wrestle with this idea of whether or not they're real or the things he's seeing make sense. Like I said, it's a quiet, almost dreamlike sort of film. And it's been getting attention and buzz, both for its interviews with Andrew Scott and Paul Mescal, who have really fun chemistry, and also because, it's an intimate little something, and maybe this will be a bit of an Oscar feature. But didn't really get any nominations, and nobody really went for it, and it couldn't find distribution anywhere. So when it finally fell onto Hulu, where we just found it a couple weeks ago, I thought, well, this will be a fun fill-in. We'll cover this in the show. And I think I'm glad I watched it, but it's definitely not what I expected. Andy, what did you think of All of Us Strangers?
I really enjoyed this for the most part. It's a little slow. It's a little bit like eating your vegetables, and it's a movie that's really interesting to discuss after you've seen it. I've heard it described a number of ways. It is based on a Japanese novel, and it's a bit of a ghost story. It kind of has that Spirited Away or Marnie Was There kind of from Studio Ghibli, where it's fantastical. He's either like going back in time, or his parents are showing up at his age now. But imagine you at your adult age going back and talking to your parents at the age they were when you were 12, and talking about the kind of problems and shortcomings that you never had a chance to discuss because you were a child, and what that kind of means and how that helps our character develop. That stuff is really interesting to me when he's having these conversations with his mom, and it's really strange because when he has a conversation with his mom and his dad, and it's their first conversation is really about his coming out and him talking about being gay, and his mom was like, "Oh, I'm so shocked. I had no idea. Like, I did," and she talks in a very arcane ways, the way people used to look at homosexuality. She started, "Well, aren't you worried about AIDS?" Like this kind of gay panic that what was normal for the 80s and 90s. And it's not the reaction you would expect from her. And his dad is kind of the opposite, where he's like, "Oh, I always knew that you were gay, and I wish I would have done better to support you, and when you were getting picked on at school and all those things." So it goes differently than you think it would go in that situation. And he addresses other issues with them. And the thing that we know from early on, not a spoiler because it happens in Act 1, but his parents died in a car crash when he was 12. So when he's seen their ghosts, it's when that's how old they were, is that kind of the last time he saw them, and he's grown up without them. They haven't seen him grow up and become a full-fledged adult.
It's particularly interesting that this is based on a Japanese novel, because nothing in the film is particularly Japanese. Like it is a London film. Not only does it take place in London, or just outside of it, I should say. Our two characters are Londoners, and all of the music is like old British pop. I've been listening to some of it on Spotify. Actually, some good tracks in there. Want to mention, by the way, some heat on the All of Us Strangers playlist. But I think one of the things that's interesting is the way this movie walks this line between like a dreamlike state and reality. And when we're like introduced to Adam, like we discover he's lonely simply because he has nobody to talk to. And that doesn't mean that like you get the charming internal monologue of Michael Fassbender's The Killer in David Fincher's The Killer on Netflix. No internal monologue. It's just silence. It's a little bit of music and him just sitting around looking out windows. And then he's out in a field and he's sitting around looking at the field and he's walking around looking at stuff. And like, I get that. That's all very thoughtful. I totally get that feeling, but also it just gets a little dull. Just gets a little dull. It's not a big cast in All of Us Strangers. Like I said, our four leads are introduced right at the front. It's Andrew Scott, Paul Mescal, Claire Foy, Jamie Bell. That's pretty much it. It's a real small cast. And you get these really wonderful highs of conversation. Interaction are the best moments of All of Us Strangers, because those are the moments where we're seeing these characters for who they are, talking to one another. Like Andy said, this fascinating interaction with his parents, where when he goes to his mother, a character who's maternal, who's usually much more accepting, and tells her that in a very casual way that, hey, I'm gay, the reaction to that is just twinged with negativity, and it's so obvious. It's so obvious on Andrew Scott's face that he knows his mom doesn't like what he said, but he's trying to be, hey, this is normal now, and this is okay, Mom, this is all right. And then meanwhile, like, the absolute anguish that comes with his father breaking down in tears and like crying and telling him, hey, I'm sorry I wasn't better back then. Brutal. So brutal. Like, incredible work. But that's couched in like 45 minutes of nothing really happening, and like, it does make it a tough watch on the front. I know writer-director Andrew Haigh. He's done a lot of TV in the past, been very pensive TV. He did Looking, which was a 10-episode series. It got adapted into a TV movie. He did a couple episodes of the OA, but otherwise he hasn't done a lot of features. So he's definitely leaning on industry contacts and good friends and grabbing Andrew Scott from stage like to come over and do this stuff, and it plays. But it just needs some kind of editor somewhere to go through and be like, hey, this 20 minutes of nothing happening, this needs to be something. You gotta have our character go to a flower shop and talk to somebody, or have them, have some kind of chance run in or chance encounter. Because it just, outside of these four characters, it's a little trim on content, I think.
Yeah, the like I said, I was really interested in the parent stuff. I don't really like the B plot, which which deals with him meeting Paul Mescal's character and them developing a relationship. That's the part that really dragged for me. The stuff with the parents is really interesting, because that's the premise. That's the interesting. What would you say to your parents as an adult, your adult self? That part's interesting, but and his performance is really incredible throughout, but man, it just gets real slow in that B plot stuff.
His interactions with Paul Mescal's Harry are not quite as exciting as you'd think. And it's funny because Harry is so obviously a catalyst for his life to change. Like, he goes from being a loner to, hey, we should go out. In fact, I want you to take me out. Let's go to a club. Let's try this exciting new street drug together that I can't say or else we'll get demonetized. And like, let's have fun, and let's listen to music. And like, that stuff is all really good. And you even get a bit of good drama towards the end when like he's explaining that he's maybe kind of seen his parents, and Harry's like, what do you mean, Adam? Like, what do you mean you've seen them? Like, all that stuff's pretty interesting. And like, I think it genuinely leads to somewhere that's meaningful, but it's just a bit of a journey to get there. And I don't think that journey is maybe as like pensive as the original work was meant to be. I don't want to say it I don't want to use the words film school. I don't want to say it feels film school. Andrew Haig's done a lot of other stuff, but like it reminds, like, dude, I made little shorts in college and they were terrible. And they had a lot of stuff like this. Lots of like, have your character look off screen for 10 seconds, and I'm listening to music, and like, it means, that stuff means what you ascribe it to mean. And if you can't put that purpose into your film, I think people get a little lost along the way. That's all. It leads to a movie that ends up feeling more disparate than concrete.
Yeah, I was a little surprised that this has been getting a lot of praise. A lot of people thought it would get some Oscar nominations, and I can see why, but it was a struggle. It was a struggle to get through.
Like I said, I do think there's some magic in there. There's even like a couple of really great shots in a couple of these club scenes, like these really clever like crash zoom focus moves that Haig's working in here. Like there's some magic sprinkled in All of Us Strangers. It's just baked in a little bit, and you got to look for it, and you got to spend some time really trying to see what's special here. I do think I think it's a cool movie, but it's low key and it's understated and it's dreamlike. Yeah, it reminds me of kind of Kaufman, like kind of loose goose Michael Gondry kind of stuff, you know. For people who are into that, I think it's something really special. For everybody else, I think this is why it hasn't been getting as much Oscar attention like we would have thought, right? Why it's been so hard to see it, why we haven't been able to go see it in a theater. This is why, because when you actually look at the film, you're like, oh, this is a bit more of a project and a bit less of a mainstream piece of cinema. And I think that's totally okay. But without giving too much away, and maybe we already have, we should get to recommendations. Andy, would you recommend All of Us Strangers?
I would say save it for streaming. It's on streaming. It's available on Hulu. If you have a lot of interest in this, there, like I said, there's been a lot of buzz. We'd heard really good things about it. If you're interested, I would say check it out. It's only 100 minutes, but it is very slow, very meditative. It's a little slow. That's all.
Yeah, I think All of Us Strangers is good. I don't think it's a great film, but I think it's a good one. If you like Charlie Kaufman, you like Michael Gondry, you like maybe even a little bit of that Spike Jonze, right? Kind of odd, dreamlike state, surrealist film. I think you'll be into it. It's different, it's queer, it's exciting. It's a little slow. That's the one thing. You're gonna have to slog a little bit to get to the magic, but it's in there. It's a good time, and it's available on Hulu. If you want to go check it out, please do. God, and that's our show for the week. Andy, what a show. Episode 280. What are we at? 285? 245? Coming up on episode 250. That's right. God. Big things going on for 250, but we'll talk about that when we get to it, right,
Man,
Andy?
That could be, you know what that could be? That could be Furiosa.
Really?
250 could be Furiosa.
You could line up? Talk about a manna from heaven, right? Like, we line up a Furiosa, it'd be amazing. Anyway, Andy, exactly. What are we watching next week?
We're going to be looking at Rose Glass's new feature, who did the horror movie Saint Maud. Her new movie is called Love Lies Bleeding, which is kind of an action drama starring Kristen Stewart and Ed Harris. It's a little bit of a crime caper. It looks really intense. Really looking forward to that. And then we're going to see what else to check out on streaming. We got possibly Dream Scenario or Roadhouse, or see what our options are. And also just some FYI releases. The Mark Wahlberg dog movie Arthur and the King comes out this Friday, March 5th, and the American Society of Magical Negroes also comes out March 15th. That's a movie we haven't really talked about. I saw a trailer for it. It does look interesting and funny. So that's also coming out.
How is Ed Harris still doing features? I bet he's sitting down for over half the film for Love Lies Bleeding, right? How is he still doing movies? I just watched The Truman Show last week, and he looked old in that movie, and that came out in the 90s. I don't know.
Been old my whole life, yeah.
He's been old my whole... That's right. Either way, I'm excited to see Love Lies Bleeding. We will find something else to cover for the show, absolutely. If you want to hear what we're watching next week, you want to keep up with movie news, you want to know what's going on at the cinema, keep it here on Offscript for more. You can subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast platform, iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, iHeartMedia. We're on YouTube. Big things going on YouTube. Big things happening on the Offscript YouTube channel. You got to go check it out. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all those usual places. You might even be watching us there right now. Our website is offscriptfilmview.com, and you can email us correspondence at mail@offscriptfilmview.com. Believe it or not, I have it on good authority that Dr. Draper over here has been doing some fancy interviews around the country talking about Oscar stuff. Those might be showing up on that website. So if you want the exclusive, if you want the scoop, you want to hear what radio listeners all over the country have been listening to, go check it out. Somebody might think I'm kidding. I'm not. This is a real thing. Those may or may not be on the website. Yeah. But that's the show. God, that's episode 245. Did I miss anything? I think I covered everything.
No, I think that's it.
That's it. That's a wrap. All right. From all of us at Offscript, the home of bold cinema, I'm Zach Lewis.
And I'm Dr. Draper.
Thanks for watching.